Welcome back to One American Baseball Podcast. You're joining us for episode 19. I'm Jaden, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host Chris. And as always, we're going to talk some baseball today. Chris, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm good. It's a nice day out. I got my nostrils blasted by a bunch of pollen. I just went out and disc golf. So I was looking for a disc and was bushwhacking a bunch of plants. So I'm kind of in the trenches, but we're gonna talk about some baseball. So
Yeah, well, bear with Chris if he sneezes through the episode or anything.
yeah, I'll mute.
Can't blame him for getting out and enjoying the nice weather as the calendar turns to June. And I think that's where we'll start our baseball talk. We want to start things off by letting everyone know that we are now on YouTube. You can find us at One American Baseball Podcast. The hope with this is that it'll help grow our audience a little bit. The YouTube algorithm seems to be pretty kind with suggesting some smaller pages at times. So if you see us on YouTube, we hope you join us for the journey. Help us grow our audience. We love talking baseball, and anyone who wants to listen to us talk baseball, or comment on anything, please feel free. And we're still finding our footing with the video format. So if you guys think of anything, if you tune into the YouTube and you think of anything that might help us, please let us know. Constructive criticism is always welcome. Like I said, we want to continue to grow the audience, and a good way to do that is to continue to make better quality content. So if you guys have anything for us, please let us know. As far as the YouTube goes, episode 15 and onward will be posted to YouTube. Didn't post the earlier stuff just because I wasn't sure about the quality and everything, but episode 15 and everything after that will be on the YouTube. So, yeah, if you see us on YouTube, check us out, subscribe, and help us grow a little bit.
Yeah, those are the episodes that are worth watching anyway. So uh, the other ones are kind of out of date anyway, and we weren't that
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, now that news is out of the way, that hot breaking news, we'll get into our weekly takeaways from our Reds and Guardians. I'll kick it off with the Reds. Early this week, we made, or maybe it was late last week, I can't remember when exactly this news dropped, but we traded Alexis Diaz away. We sent him to the Dodgers for a pitcher named Mike Villani. Now, Mike Villani is a bullpen arm who was pitching in the complex league. He was a 13th round pick for the Dodgers. Diaz was optioned to AAA when he got to LA, so he's in wherever the Dodgers AAA team is. I can't remember off the top of my head. This for me is a nothing trade aside from, we freed up 4.5 million, so I'm hoping that that lets us maybe make a bigger move as we get into the summer. But as far as trading Diaz away, I don't think we lost anything. And as far as gaining Mike Villani, I don't really think we gained anything from this trade either way. I, you know, we should have traded Alexis Diaz in 2023 when his value was super high. We could have gotten way more out of him then. I mean, hindsight being 2020, you don't. He was an all-star in 2023. You don't foresee him being unable to really fulfill any big league role for you 2 years later. But you know, teams were asking about Diaz in 2023, and we could have gotten a lot out of him, maybe enough to help us make the playoffs in 2023. And instead, we decided to stick with Diaz, and it didn't work out for us. Now, I feel like maybe you could have seen this coming. Diaz has always been effectively wild, is what he was labeled when he was pitching well. So he wasn't really in the zone much, or if he was, the pitches were really hittable. It's just that guys weren't really sure what the pitch was going to do, so he would lock guys up, or they would swing at something that maybe they shouldn't have. So like I said, hindsight being 2020, it would have made sense to trade him in 2023, but not much you can do now. He's off the roster. He's in LA. Um, and we've got Mike Villani in our system and a little bit more spending money. So hopefully that works out for us. I guess we will see as the summer rolls along because our GM, Brad Metter, made a comment to the Cincinnati Enquirer that said, right now, we're solely focused on winning this year. So when the GM comes out and says that, that gives you a little bit of hope that they're going to try to make some moves in a positive direction. Now, this came out on May 29th, so we'll see how things change as the team continues to play and win and lose and all that. We'll see, because a lot can change from here to the trade deadline or the end of June or the All-Star break. So, sure, that's nice to hear, but don't talk about it, be about it. Go out and make a big impact move. If you're really focused on winning this year, you don't have to wait till the trade deadline to go make a big trade or make a free agent signing or something like that. I mean, there aren't many free agents left on the market, but JD Martinez is still out there. Um, year after year, Reds fans have sort of been fed this story that the front office wants to compete, and it's a matter of time, either with prospects coming up when LA and Matt McClain and Spencer Steer and all those guys were still in the minor leagues and we were losing 100 games a season. It was, well, be patient. We want to compete, but we have these prospects that are going to come up, and then we're going to be able to compete. And now that these guys are up, it's, well, we want to compete. We're going to sign Terry Francona, but they haven't really done anything to improve the roster in any significant way. I mean, I think it was last episode where I complained about a lot of the trades that they had made the past couple of years. Guys like Harrison Bader, Hunter Renfroe, Dom Smith are three names that come to mind immediately. And I mean, sure, you can say you want to compete, but when you go out and you get guys like that at the trade deadline, that tells me a whole different story, which is that you don't really want to compete. You want to try and you want to make a move to make it seem like you want to compete, but you're not really getting a guy who's going to improve this team in any meaningful way. So I hope this year is different. Um, but it's time for the Reds front office to be about it instead of talking about it, I feel like. Um, my next point was, well, I wrote this early on in the week when I was working on the outline. And since it's sort of changed a little bit, but I had that the offense had maybe turned a corner. And they seem to be finding their footing, and then they declined to show up the last two games of the Chicago series. They scored six or more runs. They've scored six or more runs in their last nine games, but that momentum sort of came to a screeching halt in the last two games where they scored 0 and 3 runs respectively. However, there are certain guys who seem to be coming out of the slumps that they've been in for most of the season, or not even slumps, but not the production you would hope to see from them. The first guy is Ellie, of course. Ellie started to heat up, which is nice because he wasn't playing poorly. He was just playing about league average. And when he's your superstar, you're supposed to be the guy that you can count on to really bolster this team in this lineup. League average isn't good enough. Since May 23rd, he's hitting 343 with an on base percentage of 410 and a slug of 743. So that's an OPS of 1.153. So that's a really good OPS for Ellie. It's a WRC plus of 206. So very high wins, weighted runs created plus for Ellie. And I picked 523 because that's sort of when the offense came out of it. That was the start of that first Cubs series, and when we saw him start to score more runs on a consistent basis. So all these guys that I'm going to talk about, these are stats since the start of that Cubs series. So my next guy is Tyler Stevenson. Since the start of that Cubs series, he's hitting 310 with an on base of 364 and a slug of 655. It's an OPS of 1.019, and it's a weighted runs created plus of 168. So again, a guy who, you're counting on him for production from the catcher spot. You want him to be able to either catch or play DH every day. Last year, he's one of the best offensive catchers in the game. He comes back off of his oblique injury and he doesn't really look like himself for a couple of weeks. Since the 23rd of May, he's really turned it around and has started to look like the Tyler Stevenson that we all knew and loved last year. And then my last guy is TJ Friedel, who's been our leadoff guy for most of the year and has been doing a great job for a lot of the year, but he's really turned it on in this last week and a half. It feels like he's hitting 421 with an on base of 488 and a slug of 553. That's an OPS of 1.041 and it's a WRC plus of 189. So that's three guys right there who seem to be turning a corner, maybe will help this lineup start to be more consistent and more competitive, you hope. And you hope the rest of the lineup can sort of follow suit. And when these guys catch fire, they'll all catch fire. But as I say that, I also have a complaint about the lineup construction. Santiago Espinal, aside from today, has been hitting second in the order every day since Matt move down in the order. Now, I'm a big Santiago Espinal fan. I think he's a really great glove, a really great utility guy to have on the bench that you can slot in. Um, as a defensive replacement late in games, or if a guy needs a day off, sort of anywhere in the field, he's a great piece to have. But he doesn't really belong batting second in this order. In the past week, he's grounded into a double play, I believe, 3 times to end big innings that I can remember. And it's prevented Ellie from getting a shot to make a big impact in the game because, he'll ground into a double play and sort of kill um, an inning that was building momentum for the Reds. He's batting 194 when batting second in the order. He's got an OPS of 496 when he bats second. He's batting 329 when he hits anywhere else in the lineup. So he's got more plate appearances batting second in the order than anywhere else, but that's a very big gap. And I think if you combine all the plate appearances he has batting anywhere else in the order, it is somewhat similar to when he's batting second. So um, it seems like he just, for whatever reason, the second spot in the order is not really setting him up to succeed. And it feels like Tito, for whatever reason, he's being stubborn and he's not putting him or this team in a position to succeed when he bats him second. Now, I think ideally you move Spencer Steer, Gavin Lux to second in the order for now. Steer against lefties, Lux against righties. You sort of do a platoon of that second spot in the order. And I honestly think that when Noelvi Marte comes back, if he's the hitter that he was early on in the year when he um, got called up from AAA and sort of went on that really hot streak. If he can prove that that wasn't just fluky and he can do that consistently, I think that that should be his spot because he can hit for some pop. He can hit just to get on base, makes good contact, puts together good at bats. Um, and I think, Friedel, Marte, Ellie is a really dangerous 1, 2, 3 in this lineup. If Marte is the guy that I hope he is. And my last point, I'm going to be a little optimistic. I know that I'm sort of the Debbie Downer of this podcast a lot of the times, but I'm going to try and be optimistic today. It's been a rough last 10 days of baseball, but you don't want to lose the forest for the trees in a 162 game season. The Cubs seem, as much as I hate to say it, and Chris, as much as I know you would hate to say it, and will probably hate to hear me say it, the Cubs seem to be one of the best teams in baseball at the moment, and their bullpen that was really, scuffling early. They've seemingly righted the ship a little bit. Their bullpen has looked better the last couple of weeks, and that was a weak spot for this team in April. Um, a lot of people were talking about the Cubs bullpen was the reason they weren't going to be able to contend. However, they've seemed to have turned that around in the last couple of weeks. We went 4-5 in a stretch where we played the Cubs and the Royals. And the Royals are a very good team at home. We went into Kauffman Stadium and took 2 of 3 against them. So, you're almost playing 500 ball in a stretch where you're playing two of the better teams in baseball. And we're 2 bullpen meltdowns away from this being 6-3 in this stretch of baseball. You know, we could have swept the Cubs in that first series, and then you go 6-3, you swept the Cubs in a series, and it's an entirely different outlook on the season, all because of 2 games that may be consequential when we finish up. But 2 games in the span of a 162 game season is really not that much. Now, like I mentioned, some guys are starting to heat up. That's really huge in Ellie's case. And this team historically gets hot in June. June and July, this team likes to get hot when the weather gets hot, is the saying around Reds country. And the difference is this year we haven't played ourselves out of it in May. Now in 2023 and last year in 2024, we sort of played ourselves out of it in May, and then we had to play catch up the rest of the year. We're 2 games under 500 coming into June, or we were 1 game under 500 coming into June. We're 2 games under 500 now. And if we can get hot, it'll be a distant memory. Hopefully in September and October. Um, we've got the Brewers and the Diamondbacks this week. The Brewers are hot at the moment. They're on a 7 game win streak, but this is a good series to use it as an opportunity to stop their momentum and build some momentum of your own. I mean, if you take two or three from the Brewers, is a team that's historically had our number, we've lost, I think, 11 of the last 12 series against the Brewers or something like that. The last time we beat the Brewers in a series was in August of 2023. So you go up against this Brewers team that's very hot at the moment and you stop their momentum and build some momentum of your own. That's going to be huge. And then we get the D backs later on in the week, and we'll touch on the D backs later, but that's a very winnable series. This team to me feels like it's, one trade away and Matt McLain getting back on track from being a wild card tender in spite of, a pretty rough start to the season. I mean, it's not as bad as it has been in the past, but it's obviously not ideal. And I think, you make one really good move, one really good trade before the deadline, and Matt McLain sort of figures it out, hopefully. I mean, I'm still holding out hope that he's going to do that. I don't know, but you can only hope. And that feels like those two things happen, and this team can really contend for a wild card.
Yeah, definitely some pretty interesting points there. One thing I will say about Tito is I could definitely relate to the Santiago Espinal situation. Tito had Ahmed Rosario in the second spot for the better part of the 2023 season,
Hmm.
and Ahmed Rosario was a double play machine. I'm sure you remember me complaining about all the double plays that Rosario hit into. It seemed like he'd hit the ball 115 miles an hour, but he would just hit them right at people and then just completely destroy rallies. So that's I definitely can relate to that. That is one of it's a strength and a weakness of Tito
Hmm.
because on one end, he's very patient with his players and it shows that he believes in them. But
Hmm.
at the same time, he kind of hurts the rest of the team by putting the whole team in not as good of a position to win every day. So
Right.
I think it's a balance of getting those two extremes and a little bit of good place. But I'll get into some of my takeaways. So some good and bad news coming from Guardians country this week. Lane Thomas is out indefinitely with plantar fasciitis, and Andrew Walters went back on the IL with a shoulder injury. He's out for probably a while. So some pretty bad news. Luckily, these two guys have been kind of non-factors this season, as good as they could be. They have been non-factors, and um, Lane Thomas wasn't playing well even when he was, quote unquote healthy. So um, hopefully Lane Thomas isn't out for very long, but um, we've been doing okay, and I just say okay without Lane Thomas, but we definitely miss him very much. And this bullpen is getting along. I would love to have Andrew Walters, but it's not the end of the world. So, but off to the good news. David Fry is back. He's off the IL. It was really cool to see him get a standing ovation before his at bat last night. And even after he struck out, he was given a round of applause, which I don't think there's many fan bases who would give one of their players a round of applause after striking out. So that was really cool to see. Um, and they were talking about how valuable David Fry is to have in that clubhouse. And, I think it made big difference just from how the team played the last few days. He was in the dugout, he was in the clubhouse, and it seemed like he's a stabilizing presence in that clubhouse. So I'm definitely happy to have David Fry back. It is going to be interesting to see how many at bats he has. I think they're just going to play him in late situations. There is something to be said for, a veteran player. You don't have to play them quite as much because they've had that time to develop already. And David Fry has proven to be good in clutch situations. So it's a little bit different than the John Kenzie Noel situation where Noel isn't getting as many at bats as he probably would like to, and he's definitely suffering from it. I don't see that same thing happening from David Fry. So, but it will be really interesting to see how this team handles David Fry's playing time going forward. Um, Shane Bieber made his first rehab stint earlier last week. So he made a start in the Arizona Complex League, which is basically rookie ball. And then obviously some other big leaguers who are rehabbing and just starting their comeback. So He looked really good, and he threw two and a third innings, no earned runs, one hit, and five strikeouts. So that's what you love to see. I watched Shane Bieber's interview from after his start, and it was things were really positive, and all the guys were watching Shane Bieber in the clubhouse, which was really cool, making his rehab start. So once the starting pitchers start their rehab stint, they get 30 days to come back to the MLB team or else they are optioned or placed back on the IL. So we should be seeing Shane Bieber, knock on wood, by the end of the month. That'd be really, really nice to have Shane Bieber back, especially with Ben Lively going on the IL. We have kind of a unstable rotation right now, but um, the rotation with Bieber in it goes Bieber, Bibee, Williams, Ortiz, and then one of the three of Allen Cantillo and Colby Allard, which that's a really good top four when all the starters are playing their potential. And I think we've seen Bibee, Williams, and Ortiz not even reach their potential this year. And what I mean by that is, they've had some good outings, like they've each had some good outings. A piece, but they haven't really put any consistency together. And that's something I really need to see out of those three guys that I just mentioned. And with Bieber in the rotation, he's known to be really consistent. And as long as Bieber stays healthy, this rotation is going to take a massive step forward, I think. Um, Trevor Stephan is back to throwing live BP, so he should be starting his rehab assignment soon. And 2 years ago, he made 71 appearances, went 7-7 with the 4.06 ERA. So he was much better in 2022, but he does have experience in the back end of the bullpen, and he's not going to have that kind of pressure on him this year to be a back end of the bullpen guy with Cade Smith, Hunter Gaddis, Tim Herron, all those guys. You'll see him in the fifth inning, or maybe in a high leverage appearance when the other guys are they're unavailable. So that'll be really nice to get Trevor Stephan back. Nice veteran arm in that bullpen. So hopefully his rehab goes as planned. So um, some other news out of the Guardians. Joey Cantillo got sent down last week to become a starter. So he was thrown really well out of the bullpen. It was kind of a head scratcher to see the news flash across that Cantillo was getting sent down, but it looks like they're going to move Logan Allen into the bullpen and then stretch Joey Cantillo out to be a starter. And I like this move. I think that Allen has been inconsistent this year, and it would be nice to he's good like one or two times through the lineup, but once he gets to that third time in the lineup, you really see a lot of regression from Logan Allen. So I think it's a good position for Logan Allen to be in, to be pitching one or two innings, that kind of thing, like a long relief guy. But he looked great in his first career bullpen appearance against the Angels on Saturday. He threw one shutout inning, so that was really instrumental in that comeback victory on Saturday against the Angels. So that was great to see. Um, and then kind of my biggest takeaway from this week as a whole was that the lineup is the most complete as it has looked all season. And a big reason that is because Jose Ramirez has a 28 game on base streak, and Carlos Santana is red hot as well. So during the month of May, Jose Ramirez hit 386 with 5 home runs, 14 RBIs, and a 1085 OPS. He had another home run on yesterday. So basically 6 home runs in the last month for Jose, and he's been really effective at the plate. He had a 22 game hitting streak until I think it was game one of the Angels series, but really impressive stuff from Jose. And it's insane that, you think that he hits a certain ceiling and then he just keeps doing stuff that he's never done before. And it's really cool to see. He's just a generational player. Um, and Carlos Santana has been really good as well. He has hit 316 in the month of May with 5 home runs, 22 RBIs, and 994 OPS. Um, and kind of like Jose, it's so impressive that Santana is able to play at that high of a level for any stretch of time at 39 years old. That's one of the best months that Carlos has ever had in his career, and it's insane to see him performing this way as a 39-year-old. Um, and then we were getting a lot of production from the bottom of the lineup. So Nolan Jones has of the regular everyday starters in the lineup, Nolan Jones has the lowest OPS plus of anybody. It's a 70, but he's been doing a lot better recently. And I think that Nolan Jones was getting pretty unlucky early in the season. He's been hitting the ball hard all season, but nothing was getting down for Nolan. And I think that luck is kind of turning a corner in a way for Nolan Jones. He had a Little League home run this past weekend, which was really fun. But Bo Naylor, Gabriel Arias, and Angel Martinez were all around that 90 OPS plus mark. So they're about 10% below league average, but they all three of them have been really effective at different points in the year. So I don't think that really does them justice enough. And then other than that, everybody else in the lineup is above league average OPS wise. So um, Jose and Santana getting hot like this has really lengthened the lineup out, and I think that has made the Guardians a threat to come back in games so much. You had that huge 7-4 win on Wednesday against the Dodgers to avoid the sweep. That was probably our best one of the year. It was a complete team victory. It looked like we were out of that game, and then the Guardians played 27 outs, and it showed on Wednesday, and I think that kind of that made things tilt in our favor a little bit more. We lost the next game against the Angels, but then we came back and won the series against the Angels, which was really good. Um, and then my last takeaway is that Manuel Clase looks a lot better than he did to start the season. So over the weekend, he had two really dominant saves in 2 days. It's pretty insane to see Clase's splits from April to May. In May, he had a 0.84 ERA in 10 and two-thirds innings pitched. In April, he had a 6.75 ERA. And I think the most striking stat that I pulled up is that his BABIP, like the opposing BABIP for the opposing hitters was 489 in April, and it went all the way down to 179 in May. So he was getting pretty unlucky with how the ball was falling in April. And, I think that just came with his command. He's been able to get that soft contact, and it's really showed with that with that stat that I just pulled up. So, but looking ahead to this week, huge series in the Bronx from tomorrow to Thursday. And then Houston comes to Cleveland next weekend. So um, Guardians are facing the Yankees' top three pitchers, and the Astros have been doing, quietly pretty good. The Astros are kind of a boring team in the fact that they're just good every year. You think they're out of it, like their dynasty's over, and then they just get a new influx of guys that just take the place. It's frustrating. Hunter Brown is putting together a Cy Young season, and I'm not sure if we're facing Hunter Brown next weekend, but I hope not. So it's gonna be a really tough week. The Guardians can't really seem to get much of a break in their schedules. So
Yeah, it's baseball seems to be like that. I mean, the Reds are in the throes of a pretty rough month of baseball as far as the schedule goes too. And I think I saw something, a graphic on Reddit the other day that was strength of schedule that had already happened versus strength of schedule that was coming up. And the Reds had the weakest schedule to that point and then had the toughest schedule the rest of the season. So that didn't really
yikes.
give me a lot of hope. But yeah, along with that, I mean, I just want to say how impressive Jose Ramirez is. I'm not I don't follow the Guardians every day like you. This is a show where I follow the Reds, you follow the Guardians, and that's sort of if you're a listener, you know that. But I follow them a little bit because we talk every week and they're the other Ohio team, so I like to check in on them. But yeah, I mean Jose Ramirez is just so good at baseball, and I feel like it's while I understand how he's never gotten an MVP award with guys like Aaron Judge playing in the same league as him, it almost feels like unfair to Jose that he doesn't have an MVP award or more recognition to his name.
Yeah, I think that, I don't want to compare him to Nolan Ryan because that's a really short-sighted thing to say, but at the same time, Nolan Ryan never got any Cy Youngs.
Right?
And, he had a similar thing. He had so many like Nolan Ryan, he probably should have won a few Cy Youngs in
Yeah,
fairness. And Jose Ramirez, it's not that clear cut. He didn't really get robbed out of an MVP any season.
right.
He's just been consistently a top five MVP candidate. So, but I can't really see Jose winning an MVP in his career with Aaron Judge being around the same
Mhm.
age and putting up video game numbers like he is. Jose's not going to put up a 1300 OPS. He's
Yeah.
not that otherworldly as Aaron Judge, but Jose is so good.
Yeah. Yeah. So shout out Jose Ramirez. Hopefully he listens to this someday and maybe we'll have him on once. So but we'll move into our around the league segment now. This news broke early on this week, and I thought it was super cool, and I wanted to talk about it. It's sort of MLB adjacent, but the MVP is investing in Athletes Unlimited softball. So Athletes Unlimited is they don't just do softball; they do a couple other sports. I think volleyball is one of them, among others. But they sort of work to grow women's sports in the U.S. They're all their leagues are women's sports. So they are starting up a softball league. It actually starts this year. Opening day is June 7th. So it'll be this Saturday, I believe, is their opening day. And the MLB is investing in it. I think they have 20% stake or something like that, is what I read. Now, part of this includes promotional support as well as broadcasting on MLB Network and MLB TV. Kim I don't know how to
Ang, I don't
pronounce.
know.
I
I
don't
don't know how to
ing
pronounce that name.
I'm yeah, if we're mispronouncing it, we
I feel
apologize.
like a bad person.
Yeah, but she was the former Marlins GM. She was the first female GM in baseball. And she's the commissioner of the league. Yeah, so the first season is this year. It's from June 7th to July 23rd. They have four teams competing, and it's sort of a barnstorming style league. So they'll bounce around the country playing games. I believe what I read is that next year is when they will expand to more teams and have like set stadiums for their teams, set home stadiums. I This is huge news to me. College softball is it feels like I have always seen it as a huge deal. My aunts played softball growing up, so they were always big softball fans, and then they would have it on the TV at their houses. So maybe it was just the environment I was raised in, but college softball has always been a huge deal, at least in my life, and especially the Women's College World Series. That's happening now, and I feel like it's gotten pretty good viewership and things like that. And it's very exciting to watch. But, despite all that, we have no domestic softball league. I think they've tried a couple of times, but nothing has ever really stuck. You hope that with an established league like the MLB supporting this Athletes Unlimited League, that it will continue to grow as women's sports continue to grow in this country. I think a similar example is the NBA. Since the WNBA has started, they've always been a backer of the WNBA, and so you've seen how the WNBA has exploded in recent years. Um, Personally, I would love to see Columbus get a team when the league expands. I know, it sort of depends on uh, a lot of different things, but I think it would be really cool to see Columbus get a team. I think you put in here that they could play at OSU's softball facility.
Yeah, we
So,
have the infrastructure for
yeah,
it.
yeah. Um, but yeah, I just think this is super huge news. I think a domestic softball league is something that we've needed for a long time, and I'm really a fan of any bat and ball sport that I can watch. So, more softball is definitely not a bad thing.
For sure. Yeah. I can't say that I necessarily grew up on softball like you did, but you're right. Any bat to ball sport is really exciting to watch, in my opinion. People
Mhm.
say that baseball is really boring to watch, but I completely disagree. So,
Yeah. All right, let's get into your sort of Dodgers and Yankees discussion here.
yeah. So this was when I was writing this up, it was before Sunday Night Baseball. So I
Mhm.
believe the Dodgers lost last night to the Yankees.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the Dodgers absolutely beat the crap out of the Yankees on Saturday night. They beat them 18-2. Um, yeah, that was pretty embarrassing if you're the New York Yankees, but unfortunately the Yankees found their footing again, and they're going to be hot when the Guardians come in. So, um, yeah, that'll be interesting to see. Ryan Yarbrough, shout out to Ryan Yarbrough. He's a really crafty lefty. He throws like 87 miles an
Mhm.
hour, uh nasty off speed, but you don't think of him as really a dominant starter. And he outdueled Yamamoto last night. So
Yeah.
that's Ryan Yarbrough.
Yeah.
Um,
Um, you want to get into this sort of AL East discussion off the back of
yeah,
that?
yeah, I called it the AL least. So the the Yankees are really the only good team in the division this year. However, the Blue Jays and Rays are quietly making a run for the wild card. So the Blue Jays are 31 and 28, and the Rays are 30 and 29. Both those teams have been pretty hot recently, especially the Rays. I think the Rays are kind of an exciting team. They have a good pitching staff. Junior Caminero is getting really hot. He's on my fantasy team, so I love to see that. Jonathan Aranda, their first baseman, has been off to a really good start this year. A lot of people don't know who Jonathan Aranda is just because the Rays are not, they're playing in a spring training facility this year, and they're just not as good as they have been. But with that said, I think the Rays are a sleeper team to make a playoff run this year.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily believe in the Blue Jays as much, just because their pitching staff isn't as good, and they lost Dalton Varsho.
Mhm.
Dalton Varsho had pretty serious injuries, so um, but yeah, uh, Orioles are a disaster, and the Red Sox. The Red Sox need to call up Roman Anthony. I can't believe, like, we keep saying on this podcast that Roman Anthony needs to get called up, and the Red Sox are doing anything but call him up. There have
Yeah.
been I believe Marcelo Meyer is
Mhm.
another guy that's come up recently, and he's
Mhm.
ranked below Roman Anthony. And I think they're waiting for the right time to call him up. And, he's a lot more valuable in the system, and you want to call him up at the right time. I get all that, but they're wasting time with this season. And I think the more time they waste, the more of a hole they're going to put themselves in. Um,
Yeah.
so that's all I
Yeah.
have there.
Speaking of call ups, another top prospect got called up just yesterday. Jack Caglione.
Caglione.
Caglione was called up for the Royals. He was their first round pick last year. He is a first base slash designated hitter prospect. He played college ball in Florida. Um, I wanted to point out that he could have been drafted by both the Reds and the Guardians. I feel like the Guardians don't need him as much, but it
Well,
would have been nice to have him as a Red.
he's gonna play right field for the Royals because they have Vinny Pasquantino.
Mhm.
So I actually picked him up on fantasy and this, about
Yeah,
12 minutes after the first news broke. I was right on Jack Caglione. So I dropped Tyler Soderstrom. He's been kind of stinking it up recently. So Jack Caglione's my new first baseman, but I wouldn't mind him getting switched over to an outfielder on fantasy because there's some things I can move around there. But
yeah,
yeah, super exciting prospect. I he looks to be the top prospect coming out of the draft, and he was selected sixth overall. So good on the
yeah,
Royals for seeing that in him. So
yeah. He's currently ranked 10th overall according to MLB.com, but he was hitting 319 in AAA with an OPS of 1094. He had 6 home runs in his AAA games. Sort of the reason he fell to sixth was that people were concerned about strikeouts.
mhm.
He only struck out 9 times in 54 plate appearances in AAA, so it seems like maybe those concerns weren't super warranted.
Yeah,
Um,
it's hard to say how guys are going to perform when they come up to the big league, just because it's such a big transition from AAA to big leagues. There's such a big talent discrepancy as
right.
far as
Yeah.
the average pitcher you face. So that fantasy pickup could really come to bite me, but you know, there's
And
there's uh, there's enough good players out there. I could just make another move. So
yeah,
uh,
it's definitely worth
yeah,
it. I was on the Paul Skeens news last year in fantasy. I
yeah,
was the first person to get the Paul Skeens. I
you beat
kept
me by
hearing the
about 10
rumors and
minutes.
yeah, I was just
Yep.
waiting for the news. And thankfully it was a slow day at work. And so
Yeah.
the second the notification flashed across my screen, I got Paul Skeens. But you beat me to it this year.
Yep.
So we'll see how it works out. I wish the best for Jack Caglione. Maybe not this year. Maybe he gets sent back down just because he's on your fantasy team, and then maybe next year when I draft him or something, I'll want him to play well. But we'll get into our last point here, which is about an NL West team that you're concerned about.
Yeah. Arizona Diamondbacks, I had this team being really good this year, and I think for good reason. Their team on paper, their starting rotation was Corbin Burns, Zach Gallen, Brandon Pfaadt. Let's see if I can name their other Eduardo Rodriguez. He still play for them.
I believe
Um,
so. I can't remember if he was healthy to start the year, but he's still in their
I think he
organization.
is still healthy for them. And then Merrill Kelly,
Yeah,
which those are guys with really, Merrill Kelly's a league average guy, but The rest of the guys have really high ceilings, and their
Mhm.
offense was the best offense in baseball last year. They were better than even the Dodgers, and they added Josh Naylor onto their team, who has had a really good season for them, like quietly had a really good season. And then, Ketel Marte has been having a bit of a down year, but he's still a really good player. Um, but the story of this Diamondbacks team is their pitching staff is one of the worst in baseball. They're 25th in baseball in ERA at sitting at a 482. And their bullpen is, I think you have it down here, their bullpen is 26th in baseball.
Yeah.
And I just want to touch on how I guess close together the middle of the pack teams are as far as ERA goes. So the Guardians team ERA, they were 21st as of yesterday, sitting at like a 402.
Mhm.
But yeah, there's so many teams within like point 0.2 runs of each other. It's really like even though the Guardians are ranked closely to the Diamondbacks, there's such a big difference between, the Guardians pitching staff and the Diamondbacks. So um and then, their bullpen is tough to watch. And I feel bad for Diamondbacks fans out there because they get a lead, their offense gets them a good lead, and then the bullpen just blows it. So the vibes are not good in Phoenix right now. So
Yeah.
and to add on top of that, it's gonna be like 118 degrees every day in Phoenix this summer. So I would not want to, even though I was in Phoenix earlier this year, I would not want to be spending a lot of time down there this summer. So
Yeah, and to sort of add insult to injury on top of all of that, Corbin Burns left the game early Sunday with what seemed like an elbow injury. Some people
yeah,
online read his lips. It looked like he said, "It's my elbow, it's dead," or something like that.
yeah,
So, you hate to see that for Diamondbacks
yeah.
fans. You hate to see that for Corbin Burns. He's been one
Mhm.
of the best pitchers in the MLB for quite some time now. But yeah, I mean, if they lose Corbin Burns, that really feels like that could be the death blow for this
Yeah.
team.
And then correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Brandon Pfaadt had a triple double a few days ago.
Yeah, yeah. One of their
Yeah,
pitchers pitched a triple double. I can't remember if it was Fott, but it was one of them. Yeah.
I think it's
So
Pfaadt.
yeah, tough times in
Yeah,
Arizona right now.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
And I, I
but
was I was high on
mhm.
Brandon Pfaadt. I think he's a good pitcher, but
Yeah, I mean,
hasn't had a great season.
the NL West is a division that we were both super high on just a couple of weeks
Mhm.
ago, and it seems like the Diamondbacks have come crashing back down to earth.
Yeah,
The Giants and the Padres and the Dodgers are still good, but it really felt like that was going to be a division where the three teams that didn't win it, not being the Rockies, were going to make the wild card, and now it feels like the Diamondbacks are sort of playing themselves out of contention.
for sure. Yeah, you don't
Yeah,
want to say that anybody's out of it in the beginning of June, but at the same time, with the division they're in and how competitive the wild card's going to be in the NL, if they go on a skid in the middle of the end of May, early June, that's not a good thing if you're a ball club. So it's
yeah.
a
I
difficult to
mean,
come
to
out
be
of.
fair to Diamondbacks fans, though, they in 2023, the year they made the World Series, they played a really bad month of baseball. I think it was in
Yeah,
August, and they still made the World Series. So there's
mhm,
there's always hope, especially with the expanded playoff format
for
and
sure.
the wild card and everything. But I think that's where we're going to leave you for this week. Thanks so much for listening. Check us out on the YouTube if you're checking us out on the YouTube, but you don't you find us on YouTube, but you don't want to watch us on YouTube, you can check us out on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts. Share us with some friends, share us with anyone who might like this podcast, Guardians fans, Reds fans, Ohio baseball fans in general. We're trying to grow this thing, and we would love to have as many people along for the ride as we could. So thanks a ton for listening.
Yes, make sure to have this on multiple devices, put it on mute, put it on your TV. If you're done listening to the podcast, on your commute from work, then put it on your TV when you're cooking dinner, anything to help us out. So
Yeah, like, subscribe, review, all of that good stuff too.
for
But that's where we'll leave you. Thanks so
sure.
much for listening, and we will catch you next week.